In August of 2019, Edmonton City Council declared a climate emergency, with a detailed action plan released in 2021. What does a sustainable future for our city look like, and what does City Council need to do to combat the climate emergency?
I think realistically we need to have a balanced approach when it comes to, because we have to realize that yes, we are in a climate crisis, but we also have to live in reality in that fossil fuels are kind of where we're at. We need to start the transition to get out of that. And there's made in Edmonton solutions to this as well. We've started, and it's small, I know, but the transition from incandescent to LED lighting citywide is, you think about the savings and how I think they're about 97% more efficient than what we had before. So that's a good step. We need to, with every single building that the city invests in, has to be ready and sustainable in that respect. And they did well at the Meadows Rec Center with the living roof and things along those lines as well. So I think we're on a good path. We need to continue on that path. Solar and looking into solar energy for city facilities is a great way. And I think realistically residents, because there's the federal and the civic grants in terms of getting solar power. I think if we can encourage and help residents put solar in their homes and maybe get off the grid, that's another excellent way to continue on a personal basis, not just a city-wide basis. Because we all have to commit to that as well.
So, two of our most significant tools as a city are land use and transportation. About 50% of the time that City Council spends, or approximately, at least that, is on land use planning. And we are not going to meet our emissions targets if we don't make some pretty significant changes in that space. Again, we have to be able to bring people into the conversation to do that effectively. I spent a number of years working on the retrofitting space. In the retrofitting space, I did not done. We stalled out at one point, but we got our house from a 36% to a 76% efficiency. And it's an extremely challenging process. But if we want families and others to be able to move into our existing housing stock, we need to be able to figure out how to help upgrade all of these buildings effectively and efficiently and easily for people, because it's been too complicated. That also means working with the trades and with contractors and with builders and developers to help scaffold them into doing this work, because 80% of the building stock that we have today, or will have in 2050, we already have today. I did a really long thing with Climate Hub on my climate goals and some of the work I've done. So I'll point you that way for more. But every decision that comes to council is a climate decision at this point. And whether it's our budget, whether it's a land use application, when we look at how we're supporting our neighbors, every decision we make, whether our transportation, and we need to be thinking about those decisions through that lens.
Yeah, I think that such an important step. I know some people think it's just paying lip service by declaring a climate emergency, but I think that was the first step towards actually getting our city on track to tackling the climate emergency. So I think there's a few things that we need to do, and the biggest thing, and it's outlined in the city plan, and I'm sure every candidate's really talking about it with the 15-minute communities. I think that is key. I would focus more on 15-minute communities that are around walking, because if you can walk everywhere within 15 minutes, I think that's a huge step forward. So essentially what we're doing with that is we're removing cars from the road and creating a community and a city that keeps people close to home and requires a lot less travel, which is probably one of the biggest ways that the city of Edmonton can actually tackle the climate emergency. The other ways that we can do it is by ensuring that we're set up long term for the changes in that are coming because of the climate emergency. I think about our electric grid, and if we're prepared for the change over to electricity, which is it's coming, and that's the first step, is we need to make sure that we're ready for that. Big builds of condo buildings, we need to be ready to have electric cars parked there. It's so much more expensive to go back and retrofit these big parkades with the electric vehicle parking. So if we can do that as they're building, I think we'll save a lot of money. On top of that, we should use our procurement. We spend a lot of money, and let's use that money to buy greener products. There is sustainable procurement within our procurement policy, but it's pretty vague, and I think we need to strengthen that and make that a priority.
I'll answer the last question first. The first thing I think we can do to combat the climate emergency is by doing three things. One, by implementing fare free transit. And what we need to do, and the biggest thing we need to do here, and people need to understand this, is that we can't have every Edmontonian driving in a car. That is an unsustainable practice that will lead to higher emissions, and it's something that it's unsustainable. It leads to higher road repair costs, which raises taxes. It leads to so many problems that could be alleviated by investing in fare free transit. Everyone deserves to have mobility in the city. I'm proud to be, once again, the only candidate that has publicly said that I would actually advocate to get fare free transit completed, because at the end of the day, that is the best system that we can get done. People deserve to live in a city where they can hop on a bus and they can rely on it to get to work. Some other things I think we can do to actually address the climate emergency is we need to change info standards. We need to make sure that info homes are all energy efficient. We need to make sure that we're strengthening our requirements around energy, and that we're strengthening our requirements around environmental sustainability for these homes, because that's the best way we can really change, and especially in mature neighborhoods. It's the best thing that we can do. And lastly, I believe firmly that we need to consult with folks. At the end of the day, a lot of things are going to be changing in the next couple of years. We need to keep folks up to date, and we need to have constant conversations about what we can do better as a city council. For me, a sustainable future looks like to me is a city where we have good multimodal transit, so people don't have to rely on cars. And it also looks like to me a people-centered city. So that means, that we don't necessarily have our roads specifically designed for cars. We have it specifically designed for people and pedestrians. Like scrambles that just came onto White Avenue and 104th. These are the type of things that I want to see in the future. I also think that a city with fare-free transit, where anyone can hop on the bus, is another good example of something.
City Council has to do a lot of things. They have to be much more broad-minded when it comes to green initiatives. Solar is not the only initiative, cycling is not the only initiative, and the residents are telling me they're quite concerned about transit, for example. We don't have a sustainable transit program, and it has to be something that users find affordable and varied, where when they use transit, they can get to their locations quickly. From a sustainability standpoint, I'm very concerned about urban sprawl, yet we have lots of neighborhoods in the city that should be or could be redeveloped. If we can go ahead and give $475 million towards an arena to be built in the city, maybe we could give some perks to developers to get them interested in neighborhoods that are not doing well, where the schools are closing, the old homes are boarded up. Give them incentives so they're not sprawling. We have to look at the tax base too. As we get further out of the city in those brand new homes, those homes, their taxes is substantially lower than the inside of the city. When we have a tax regiment like that, it's discouraging people from staying within the city. Blatchford has approximately room for 30,000 homes. That we need to deal with immediately. From what I understand, we're losing money like water out of a sieve. We need to make that more sustainable.
I think it's interesting. The heat wave this summer put the climate emergency front and center for many neighbors' minds. I'm constantly reflecting on that quote. The summer we had is the coldest summer that we are going to experience now for the rest of our lives. In other words, it is only going to get hotter. And I think it's important for City Council to remember that every single decision we make is a climate decision, that every single decision we make has climate implications, and we need to be mindful of that. So I think we have some amazing work done by previous councils and administration in setting the direction. What we need is the political will to follow it, and we need to make sure that our city councillors are animated advocates, not just at City Hall, but to the provincial government, to the federal government, for meaningful action on the climate emergency. That has to be front and center, and it's important to realize that the crisis of poverty, the crisis of homelessness, the crisis of racism, all of these different pieces are all exacerbated by the climate emergency as well too. And we need to make sure that we're building a future for our children where all of us can be successful, and all of us can be feel welcomed and belong in the city. And we won't be able to do that unless we tackle the largest sources of our emissions, our buildings and our transportation systems, and we work together with other partners, other orders of government to make sure that this can be funded and we can have a fair and just future for all of us.